Hey, hey fam, can you hear me? Alright, cool. So I'm all set up. I think I need to get something to drink real quick before I get started. So I'm gonna do that. So I'm here, and we're gonna do this. So I think I said do terms up to 1.5. So I think we're gonna start at 1.5. So that's where we're gonna start. I'm gonna get some drink, and I'll be right back. It's gonna be a safe for work drink. All right, I'm good. All right, tonight's gonna get into some cool stuff. So basically I think I covered up to 1.4 essentially. So I'm starting tonight at 1.5. Sound good? So does my audio sound okay? Am I good? So hopefully I'm good to go. My son has a trombone tryout or something. So you might hear a trombone playing in a second, probably on a half hour. So hopefully we don't have too much trombone interference. My son's like a very serious trombonist. So he's gonna be playing trombone in a little bit here. All right, so everybody hear me? I'm gonna get started up here with this passively test security controls. Um, all right, so we talked about this a little bit. We talked about testing security controls, and we talked about how. Let's talk about how a security scanner works real quick. A vulnerability scanner works. So there's a couple of different. We talked about how Nmap works. I think I have Nmap on here. We talked about Nmap, and Nmap works pretty cool because you can actually scan a network, and you can actually scan for vulnerabilities with this Joker too. So, whoops, I'm stupid. Is it dash help? I don't know. How do you look for? Oh, actually, probably I can do a man Nmap probably. Let's see. All right. All right, cool. This is Nmap. There's a couple other cool schools tools out there that stuff similar to this. So what I really want to find out here is I want to do I think I want to try to grab banners or something. All right, so check this out. So when you go to any kind of service, and I might just open up Wireshark. You don't have to open up Wireshark, but I'm going to just show you something really quickly in Wireshark. To show you something real quick. I'm gonna show you something in Wireshark real quick because this is, god dang it. Okay. I'm not running as root, so I need to sudo Wireshark. What I'm gonna show you in Wireshark is I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna look at banners, and show you something real quick. Do I have a dang? Just come up on here. What the heck is freaking? Oh my gosh. Dang it. Hold on a second here. I'm trying to see if Wireshark actually started somewhere. Dang it. It didn't start anywhere. The reason I need to do sudo Wireshark here is so. Man. Let me see if I got Telnet. I'm thinking here for a second here. So what if I said telnet google.com? So there's a way you can do this. I haven't did this in a long while. You can specify what port you telnet to, and it'll connect to Oops, maybe it's the other way around. Maybe I do 80 here. Alright, so watch this. If I do git / and enter. Alright, so what I did here is I telnetted to google.com. But of course, there's no telnet service running here. Now, what I'm trying to do here is I'm simply trying to get a banner, right? Now, all protocols typically has some kind of banner. Now, you see here, you can use Telnet because Telnet is a raw TCP/IP connection, and so it'll do the three-way handshake, and you just specify the port. So, as usual, I'm kind of rusty on some of these things, but it comes back to me. The old man eventually gets it. So here, I connected to google.com, and then the web server was waiting for me to do something. And I just said git /. So what that says is, give me the root index of your thing. So I'm just grabbing a banner here. Now what's cool about this is that you can see here that you're getting a little bit of information here. Now on different servers, you're going to get more information. It'll tell you all kind of cool stuff, like what version of it's running, just all kind of stuff, right? And what's cool about that is that you can use that information for other stuff. Let me show you. I can actually show you in that packet capture we already have. I'm gonna open this up and open one of these logs. I'm gonna say I'm gonna say HTTP, hit enter. I get this git right here. I'm gonna do follow TCP stream like we did before. And I bet some of y'all are like, man, I can finally see the dang cursor on this. I remember we had all that rigmarole going on. So what's cool about this, when a user tells what, so this is actually a GET request from the hacker, remember this? Where the hacker was trying to get something. He was trying to get a file, And here you see that it says wget. This is called a user agent, right? The user agent tells a lot of information about the system. On this side, you see this server right here. That server says Apache 1.3.2.6. So let me see something real quick. I'm going to actually just grab this. What's cool about this, and this is kind of small, so forgive me, you'll see it when I put it into Google. And this machine's acting slow. Okay. All right. I'm gonna put this in here. I'm gonna say vulnerabilities, and hopefully, what this does is bring us up to a good site. Oh, cool! This is a good site right here. This is actually CVE details. I'm gonna zoom that in for a second to see it. It's a very good site. CVE details, and you see this is pretty cool, because if you want to know CVE event situations, this is pretty cool. So common vulnerabilities, that's what, and I think enumeration, probably something like that, that's what a CVE is. So every time there's a major bug or something, there's these CVEs attached to it. Now you know that the packet capture we had was like an old packet capture, and the highest here, the score here indicates the worst situation. Now 7.5, it says there's a remote exploit right here. This says remote. So remote, how you gauge a CVE is you gauge it by, it says gain level access. But what's the most important here is it says access local network. If it says remote, that means many times it means it can be accessed over the internet. All right, so I'm blowing it up. Some people say they can't see my screen. Can you see it? Can you see the screen now? So, my bad. Yeah, somebody said common vulnerabilities and exposures, CVEs, and this is what usually when there's a bug or whatever, you'll see these CVEs created. So basically you see this complexity thing though. This is what matters when you look at a CVE. So if it can be accessed remotely, it's going to be a higher CVE. Complexity, it says low. That means it's not hard to exploit it, right? And then it says authentication. It says authentication is not required. So this one right here is a big bug. It's a remote access. It's a low complexity. That means it's not very hard to do. This one's local, medium, not required. So anytime you have these bugs that you can actually affect the system without any without having to authenticate, 7.8, it kind of tells you a little bit too. This one was a plus priv, it said. But basically, you can click on these and find out more information about them. So this how a vulnerability scanner works. A vulnerability does two different things. A vulnerability scanner. A vulnerability scanner will grab the header like I did that telnet thing. You can programmatically do that. You can grab the header, see what server name it is, and then like something like Nessus or Nexpose is Rapid7's products. Another product for this, Qualys. So those they have scanners that scan the network, but mainly what they're looking for is they're looking for something. They're looking for it to say server right here. So you notice here, Google only gave me 400, and they didn't give me the server here. I have seen Google give it before. They have their own web server. It's sometimes you'll see server :GWS, that stands for Google Web Server. But some people will change it or remove the server from here to kind of like, so you won't know what server they're running. From an attacker perspective, what you want to do, getting back to this, an attacker can actually get this from a lot of different sources. Shodan, and people talk about Shodan all the time. Shodan does banner grabs like this, and I can show that real quick. Shodan.io. And on Shodan, I don't know if it's going to require me. I haven't logged into this thing forever. So if I type in, I don't know, maybe I can type in something here. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put that in here. I haven't used this site forever. Wow. You see this? This is interesting. Because that's it. I said Apache, boom, boom, boom. And this thing still looks like it's out there. Wow, that's crazy. So I just typed this in Shodan, and Shodan showed all kinds of stuff, which is kind of nuts. We see that this system here is badly out of date and possibly exploitable. That's crazy. But basically, being able to passively, basically you'll be able to passively look at tools like Shodan or anything of that nature, and you'll be able to. The tools automatically do it, but what I want y'all to do is know how the tools work. So the tools are a combination of banner grabbing, and you just saw Shodan. Shodan does banner grabbing. Also, if you're sniffing packets on the wire, you're going to be able to see this as well. That's crazy. This Joker is the same one somebody exploited, but man, I can't believe people still have these on the internet. It just breaks my heart. This isn't like totally normal, by the way. So banner grabbing is important because this is how vulnerability scanners work for the most part. The banner grab here will tell you that this server is running Apache 1.3.2.6. I did a very manual process where I went over to CVE details. CVE details for this, see this? HTTP server 1.3.2.6. This is telling me here's all these vulnerabilities for this server. Now, if I'm an attacker, what I can further do is I can go to something like exploit.db. Exploit-db. You can go over here. Somebody asked, will a HTTPS banner show as well? Technically, it'll do an encryption before HTTPS. So technically, I think that it's security by obscurity though, and you can still detect. So I wouldn't use that for a security measure. If you actually do a search, I'm not 100% certain the flow of things, but what we can do is we can actually try to do this in HTTPS, if I can get Wireshark to actually capture, and we can look at what it does. But typically, if you do HTTPS, all of the communications are encrypted. But you still can get in there. You should still, there's still ways to get in there and be able to grab information on it. Also, like if you're talking about WordPress and all that stuff, I'll show you how to do that too. Basically, all right. So anyway, let me try to show you what I'm talking about. Let me try to keep this thread here. All right. So you see this thread? All right. Hold on a second. I'm doing a search for Apache 1.3.26 on here, and it's not giving me anything. But it's not stopping me from. I'm going directly on exploit DB. But so what I searched for earlier is vulnerabilities. And hold on a second here. I know that this is kind of hard to see. So I'm gonna search for. It's going up there. So I'm gonna say exploit here. Now. Here it is right here. You see that? There's a bot SSL here. It's related to that. There's another one right here. Well, let's just go here and see what this is. This may or may not affect the system that we're talking about here. But however, what I'm trying to show you is the steps that you take. This is old. This look like it might be legit, a legit exploit that would work possibly on the system here. So, what we're running through here is through banner grabbing, grab the server. You can also go to look at CVE details to see if there's a CVE. That's what I could have did on exploit DB. Before this was exploit DB, it used to be called Millworm. You see that Millworm thing right there? That used to be where everybody got their exploits from. A lot of people get exploits from there. So what you're doing is you're walking through, and this is how vulnerability scanners work. Because the vulnerability scanner does the same exact thing, except they have all the stuff in the database. They have the CVEs in the database, and they also have whether or not there's an exploit in the database too. And then from there, what you do, and is what you're doing is you if you ran this shell, this is a script, right? And you could possibly exploit like one of those servers or whatever. I'm not sure, but that's the flow that you're doing here. And I can guarantee you, if something's vulnerable, somebody out there has an exploit for it. But step one is if you can, and the thing is, you can scan the entire network for stuff like this. You can also do some other cool things. So, and we got to remember, once the web page, only the traffic between endpoints is secure. Let me try to draw this in. What's our Excalibur is our tool, right? That we like. So in here, I'm going to draw how this all works. So here, this is what we call our victim machine. All right, on the victim machine, the victim is listening to ports. You remember I said we can do netstat -an. And I can do a grep on here, egrep, listen, and it's showing me the ports I'm listening on. some of these ports are going to be bound. These are bound to IP addresses here. I mean, this is bound. If it says 0.0.0, that means it's actively listening. So 53 is listening. That means that's DNS, of course. And 631, I don't know what that is off the top of my head. But I'm listening to these ports. And so in the case of this machine over here that we're talking about here, it's going to be listening to some ports. And we said here it was going to be listening to port 80. So when I scan it and it answers the port 80, part of the server header, the response is going to be, it said server Apache something. Actually, I might have that in here. Is it here? Sweet. That's exactly what it said. Right? So from there, I can actually, on port 80, it was listening. The banner grab means I can grab the banner, and you do this with automated tools. Somebody said that port was for sharing printer, so I have a printer connected to this machine. So when I scan this, in my version of quickly scanning this was to just do the telnet thing, telnet google.com/80, and Google returned me back, but Google did not return back the header. This is the response. This is another sample of a server response. See? Server. So Google is security by obscurity, but they didn't return the server for some reason. And it could be because it's just forwarded. I don't know. But the point is, I'm trying to go back to my Excel draw. I know that that's done. So now we know basically what you do though is you do this for all services. So you would do this for all services that are listening. So that would be HTTP. 443 would be for HTTPS, etc., etc. There could be weak ciphers on here. There could be something on here. So these are just the raw vulnerabilities of Apache. I saw in there that I'm just gonna say some samples. There's stuff like I saw mod SSL possibly being something that's ran on 443. That means it's handling the TLS connections. This right here. So remember we talked about the OSI model, and this is where the OSI model is super important. The system itself, the TCP/IP stack, you can actually try to hack at that layer as well, right? And also you can have something like WordPress on this joker. So now there's this thing, so basically the first step is port 80, and then you have some application. You can hack at the application layer too, and then under WordPress, a lot of times you're gonna have the thing we call plugins. You can hack them too. So basically all the stuff that we're talking about here is we're talking about enumerating the attack surface. So, every time you add something to a system, this is gonna be every time you're adding to the attack surface. Now you can do a banner grab here. There's a tool that everybody uses. If you have a WordPress site of your own, my boy writes this tool called WP Scan, and it enumerates WordPress and enumerates the plugins. But what we can do here is, I don't know off the top of my head. So what I can do here is to find some websites that are hosted by WordPress. Watch this, hosted by WordPress. Because I know that somebody has it at the bottom of their browser. So let's go down a little bit. And we're probably gonna, somebody's gonna definitely have that on there. I'm gonna go way down here. Okay. Then, all right, let's just go to this thing because they're talking about hosting WordPress. Now, this site looks like it could potentially be a WordPress site. It doesn't have it down here. But check this out. If you right click on this and view page source, I'm not picking on random people. I'm just saying what you can do. So if I did Control F, and what I'm going to search for here, I'm going to search for WP content. So the only thing I need to know, if it has WP content in there, it's probably a WordPress site. Right? Also, look at this. So already I know that it's WordPress, right? I can do a search for version number, perhaps, because if it would sometimes show the version number. I don't see it on here. But if I type WP dash, it shows me a couple of things. Now this is where it gets very interesting. Let's look at this real quick. You see here, this is saying that this plugin, this is a plugin that it has. So what we're doing now is we're enumerating vulnerabilities, right? Let me type in ver here. This is giving me more version information here. This right here says WP emoji release, whatever, right? WP dash. Now on WP content, it's telling me what version of jQuery, telling me it's using social warfare, block library is another library. So just by me looking under the hood here, it says there's a MemberPress plugin here. Now this right here is what I would consider reconnaissance here. But if I had a scanner like WP Scan would do this automatically, by the way. Copyblogger, that's a theme. I think that's the name of the site too. So they have their own, they roll their own theme. It could be good or bad. OEM embed, that's 1.0. So if you, look at that. You see that? WordPress 5.4.3. That's what I was looking for. Meta name generator. That means that this person is running 5.4.1. So, remember the whole trick? Let's look at this real quick. Now, again, tools, vulnerability scanners, have all this stuff plugged in automatically. So I'm going to paste that in. I'm going to say vulns. And it looks like it's, you see this right here? It says this version has just been released, and I'm looking at the date. This is probably good to go. You feel me? So whoever this person is, good on them. But the truth is that you're going to find a lot of this stuff out there. But there's a tool called WP Scan that does this automatically for you. And I'm pretty sure that this is it right here. And this is how you install it. But basically what it does, it has actually, you see this, it has a WP VulnDB. Now this is kind of like the other thing we had. You have to sign in or something, right? I don't know. Alright, oh no, I don't have to sign in. Check this out. This is this is actually showing you how this looks. This is vulnerability database here. This is similar to the other one, but this is just for work. This is just for WordPress. So you have basically what this tool does is it goes and there's actually probably a signature that looks for WooCommerce related, and then it'll search for any version less than 3.1.4, and if it discovers this, and of course it's going to discover it by what we said, it's probably going to, if they had WooCommerce in here, probably say WooCommerce and then say whatever version it is right here. And that's how these things look like their version for the most part. Here's another thing right here. Boom. So, getting back to our little diagram here in ExceLDraw. So, there's multiple layers here of hardening the system and preventing it from being hacked. You need to prevent the system itself from being hacked. Like that's the box. The ports that it's listening to is Apache. Can that be attacked? Can Mod SSL be attacked? And you can scan that with Nessus. You can scan it with Nmap, Nexpose, all these different tools. But what those tools are doing is they're doing what I'm walking you through manually, and that's how they're doing it. Hopefully that makes sense. That makes sense, fam? As Wobbuffet says, you absolutely can write your own tool to do the same thing. But this is how vulnerability scanners work, and this is how people tell if you're vulnerable to attacks. It's not like it looks like magic, but it's not magic. Right? Alright, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a quick I'm gonna take a break till quarter till, so that's a 5-minute break, and I'll be right back, and then we can get back to this. I actually explained a lot of stuff here related to this, so we'll walk through these in a second. Roger that. I will talk to you in 2 seconds. So, passively test security controls. So security controls are somewhat different than just straight up vulnerability scanning. Passively test security controls. So a security control, man, I don't know exactly what these cats are aiming for here. So there's a number of different ways to test out security controls. Now I don't know. There's a couple ways to test them, and I'll walk through that real quick. So let's just walk through this real quick. Well, number one thing a lot of people know about is eCar. This thing right here, you can actually download the eCar file. You just download test file. So if I click here, enter trust me in professional mode, advanced. I'm gonna proceed. Hey, can you hear me? I'm not loud on the site. What the frick? Alright. That's weird. Not weird as in like I'm scared of getting hacked away. So this is actually this string right here is the eCar test string. Now this is like a universal this is a universal test that you can do to test out security controls. Now these security controls definitely antivirus should be able to antivirus should alert on this. Only thing you have to do is take this string. If you can't download it, you can copy it and you can paste this into any file. So I'm gonna just paste this into TextEdit. I paste it in here, save it, and you can save it as anything. It doesn't matter. I mean, what the name does not matter. So eCar, and it could be whatever. exe, the extension don't matter. You save it, and this file would if I had AV on this Linux machine, as soon as I saved it, it would pop up an alert and probably say quarantine or something like that. So this is something you can do. This is a safe test to do. So you might want to try to test it out to see whatever your if your antivirus sees it. A cool thing is you can. Oh, somebody said, "Can I zoom in?" Hold on a second. Sorry. So what I did is I grabbed this little string here. You see this? I grabbed it. Make sure it matters that the X. This has to be like the first couple of strings. So you grab it, you create a file, and you create a file that has this string in there. So Wobbuffet said a better version. Actually, better version. What do you mean by actually? There's another eCar thing somewhere. Wobbuffet, what you talking about? Wobbuffet gives me a random. Oh, okay. Wobbuffet is on Wobbuffet hustling. I love it. Wobbuffet is wild. All right. So I love you guys. Y'all, some of y'all are beasts. I love it. You know what? I think you're like, you watch. I don't know if you're an X-Men fan. I'm an X-Men fan. I'm an Avenger fan. And so what I'm like a Charles Xavier. I'm like the black version of Professor X. So sometimes I mentor a lot of people that have skills and talent. So it's kind of like I'm the Black Professor X, Charles Xavier. But people be writing scripts, and as long as y'all don't break the law, y'all good. Stay on the good side. You know what I'm saying? Use your superpowers for good. All right, so the reason why this is important is because if we talk, a concept that's always talked about is defense in depth, and like let's talk about defense in depth. On the perimeter, you're gonna have firewall, and I've drawn something similar to this before. And then the firewall is gonna protect stuff coming in from the internet and block it. The next thing that you may have to be able to, you might have a proxy, and I'm gonna say web proxy just to make sure that we're all talking the same thing. My son's playing trombone. I don't know if y'all can hear him. He has a tryout or something. Virtual tryouts. There could be some like DLP. All these technologies can do packet tracing. Packet tracing. What am I talking about? A packet sniffer. So I'm gonna say IDS, IPS. So here's the key thing though. Typically, when traffic is coming here, the traffic is going to be encrypted. This is going to be TLS encrypted, or SSL, whatever you want to say. So what they'll do is sometimes internally, what some people are doing nowadays is they're putting a certificate somewhere like on a web proxy, right? So globally, all the requests are going to come from the web proxy outbound. This box right here is gonna man in the middle, essentially. Legitly, it's a legit man in the middle because it's your system administrator that's doing it. And what they'll do is they'll create a fake certificate. I'm gonna call it fake cert because it is fake cert. It's not the real cert. But on your machine, there's things called pack files, right? And so when you go to google.com, your pack file, and somebody tell me if I'm smoking crack, all right? Because I don't like to smoke crack, especially when it comes to technology. It's gonna have this fake certificate. And what it's going to do is man in the middle. And so between here, all this business right here is going to it's going to allow all your traffic to be seen in plain text. Right? So this is kind of crazy complicated. But I'm gonna go over this in a second. So this is the endpoint. Also, I think so. The endpoint, as we know, you can also have all kind of stuff here. I'm going to draw. You can have like in here you can have a multi-layer switch with ACLs. Hey, get out, go. All these things can be in the middle of the conversation here. ACLs, I mean, a lot of stuff. And my friends, what we call this, say on here, you can have, people call this endpoint protection, not EPP, because people hate antivirus. People hate this term AV. You can have host-based versions of all this stuff, host-based IDS. So what that looks like, HIDS, HIPS, and DLP. Now, some of these devices were differently, but I'll tell you what, when you download an eCar file through here, typically what happens through the proxy, through all this other stuff, some of these things are aware, definitely the HIDs and all this, they may be aware, and they may flag that traffic for being bad traffic. So, an easy way to test is when it sees this string here, it thinks this is malware. It's programmed to think it's malware. Now, why this is important is because if we're talking about defense in depth, it should trigger multiple different things along the way. And all those things, and I'm going to totally misspell this. I always do. Is that right? Somebody tell me. Is that right? Because I'm gonna wait for a second. All right, cool. Yeah. So basically, there's a log. There's all your logs. All your logs go here. And this is something like Splunk. QRadar, Alien Vault. Those are the name three. So these products here are going to collect alerts from all these different things on her. And so this is your defense in depth. Alright. So SIM stands for Security Incident and Event Management. Splunk is a big thing that a lot of people use. QRadar is pretty heavily used. Alien Vault is pretty heavily used. Alright, so, and there's plenty of other things to do this. So why I'm talking about this is because looking back at this, passively test security controls. You have to test the security controls, and you have to be able to see the dang security control alerts. And that's why, funny enough, this is something I do have expertise in, because I created a platform that does breach and attack simulations that acts like attackers. So these things can be caught. So I would say passively testing the controls. I'm not sure exactly what that's talking about, but I'm pretty sure I covered a lot of stuff that you can test these controls. Identifying vulnerabilities. By identifying vulnerability, I showed y'all how to do that manually. And it is a process. CVE details is dope. I showed you how to go find exploits, perhaps. I showed you how to passively go to see if something's in like Shodan or something of that nature. The identify lack of security controls. So I would say, looking at our little diagram here, I think everybody should have firewalls. Everybody has. I think everybody probably has some kind of endpoint protection, and everybody must patch. Now, the more automated you get, the better. In a SIM or something like that nature, you can actually put all your logs in a central location. which I think is important too. The lack of these things, as long as you patch, that's like the most important thing I would say. Um, and there's people that buy a lot of equipment and they still get hacked at the end of the day. So basically, take what you got and use it to the best of your abilities. That's my recommendation. At least have some kind of endpoint visibility, and hopefully you have some network visibility as well. Uh, Common misconfigurations. So for all that stuff to work that I showed you, for all this stuff to work, everything must be configured properly, and everything must be configured to go to your SIM. I know a lot of places that it's very expensive to actually store. These solutions can be expensive, by the way. I mean, some of these solutions cost. If you have a big organization, you might be spending $1 million a year on Splunk, right? But basically, let me see what I was talking about. Oh, the misconfigurations. So I've seen some of the biggest breaches that ever happened in history. They actually had all the tools, but nobody was. There was a misconfiguration. Misconfiguration means your AV is not configured to alert to your SIM. Misconfiguration. A couple of years ago, funny enough, dang McAfee, was it McAfee? Yeah, it was freaking McAfee EPO. They pushed out a bad update that actually made a essential file. They thought the essential file was malware, so it quarantined and deleted these files. So this is dang McAfee, right? And that's supposed to be a security tool. So, yeah, I mean, totally was living up to the living up to the founder's legacy. So I was actually on the network, and we had like 5,000 laptops. 5,000 laptops were all 5,000 laptops are all taken down. I wrote a script, and I burnt CDs, and I gave the CDs out to all my teams so they could go and I wrote a batch file that reverted the damage. So that's one of the times where my scripting came in handy. And the whole organization's down. We had to manually touch every computer on the network. It's crazy. But misconfigurations, bugs, things of that nature happens. People change stuff. One of the concepts in the switch that we talked about it, but we didn't do it. Was it's a concept of span ports. So basically the concept of a span port is kind of like in here. This is kind of like it. So right here, there's this monitoring going on, and that concept is there's a concept called port mirroring. There's concepts called span ports. There's actual physical devices that you can do. You can put here for monitoring. So there's a lot of monitoring that can be done at this phase. And sometimes that monitoring may fall offline. Stuff happens. And in those cases, many of these devices would be rendered useless. So that's why it's super important to do. In the military, I was in the Navy, we had this thing called preventive maintenance. We call it PMs. For preventive maintenance, of course, right? And so what we used to do is we used to go around and make sure that all of our tools, all of our doors, all of our weapons, everything, you had to make sure that they worked on a certain routine. Some PMs was monthly, some PMs were yearly, some PMs were quarterly, and that's what we need. That's what you need to do. In order to make sure that the stuff's still working. Because just because you configure it right one day does not mean that it's going to be working right the next day. And so that's what I see a lot. I see a lot of misconfiguration and things like that all the time. All right, I gotta take another break. Hopefully, I'll keep it as short as 5 minutes. I'll be back in a second. Hopefully, I'll get some out of this. Any quick questions before I go? I'll be right back. All right, so there's a really good question here from Gildy 585. It says all vulns can be drills wide open. Come on in. What examples of legit vuln, but not that super overparty? All right, I'll show you how to tackle the vulnerability things. Now look at that. If you're in the chat, check out that chat. Basically, it's saying how do you triage, is what you would call it probably. How do you triage what needs to be fixed first? So the CVEs, so the CVE itself, we saw it had some information on us a little bit, right? Now, when an organization, so you see this whole the access thing. Access to me is the number one thing. How can this be accessed? Now, if it's a remote exploit, right? Local, the access means that they can access this from anywhere if it's remote. That's one thing, right? Second thing is the complexity of it. Is the complexity low, right? Low complexity means anybody can access this. So, okay, cool. It's remote and anybody can access it. And the third thing here is authentication. It says not required. So that means that's wide open, right? Right? And also, if you look here, partial. Here it says none. Partial. And this one right here, complete. Complexity was medium on this one. That's why it was lower. But you had to have local access here. So it was a remote exploit. So this is how you kind of start balancing the odds and the risk, because cybersecurity is all about risk. How do you balance these things? Seriously, this booger. So that's how you start making that. But there's another resource that I want to show you that you can actually start breaking stuff down yourself. Now, get down. So what I'm typing in here is vulnerability calculator. And this right here, the CVSS score, is pretty dope. I gotta close my door because my son's he's getting the trombone going. Hold on a second. So there's definitely a difference between what it says on the CVEs and how that's related to your network. Because if you have your network properly defended, technically nobody can. It depends. There's environments, right? There's environment stuff that you need to consider, right? If it's an isolated network, it takes the odds really way down, right? Now this is what's cool right here. This right here is pretty dope because this is what I've used on penetration tests before. If I'm going after the target, I'll use this, something like this, and then what you can do is you can add more factors in, and then you can use something like this. I actually wrote something for somebody a while ago that did automated pen test reports based on this stuff. So basically, you can go through here, and it'll generate scores for you. But it's actually there's all kind of different equations for this. There's some math involved, but this can actually help you. See, it's talking about all this stuff. Privilege required. Boom. And this how you can actually, no matter what the vulnerability is, you can start whittling it down and being more specific on how you wanna triage stuff. Yeah. So I mean, I think Dave is onto something there. Every organization is different, and there's stuff on here. I believe there's environmental score stuff that you can actually. There's nuance, and so something like this comes in for the nuance. That was a surprise. So that's one of the kiddos. So just look around for stuff like this. Like I said, this is a little bit more nuanced than just going by CVSS score, because this actually can take in stuff in your local environment and you can score it yourself. All right. So that's the stuff that you want to look to, and hopefully that helps out Guilty. All right. So any more questions over here? All right. Let me get a drink. All right. So what I want to do is go back to here. False positive, credential versus non-credential. So basically, credential means even if you look on this CVE, that credential means that let me see exactly what see on here. Privilege is required, right? None. See this user interaction. Somebody had to click on something. This is how you can start. This is how you can start playing around with these things. Authentication not required for this vulnerability. There are going to be some things that you can actually. You'll see some exploits or some vulnerabilities that if you have user access, there might be a privilege escalation bug that you find somewhere, and it'll say required here. But I'll tell you what, like if you get onto, there used to be a lot of shared servers back in the day where they give you a login to a hosting system, and you could actually escalate to admin on any box in any of their boxes. So if you had one of these websites that hosted like 1,000 WordPress sites, you could do a local privilege escalation, right? Just by having a regular. So what hackers would do is hackers would use a stolen credit card, put $5 on the server, using stolen money, and then they would just escalate privileges and totally own everybody on the server. So that's how stuff works. So look at these things, but also consider your environment. And hopefully I'm making sense. So that's why the privilege and authentication, that's why that matters. False positive is simply if you think something, it could go, I think it could go both. There's false positive and false negatives. False positive means you think you scanned something, but you need to verify. For instance, like you can scan something and it says it has a vulnerability, but if you look further, that might not be even on the system. All right, getting down to here. There's a lot of stuff here. A race condition. A classic example of race condition. I gave you kind of a race condition is when things are trying to compete for the same resources. So a good example of race condition is if you install two pieces of AV or malware, there could be a potential race condition where both of those are trying to clean and all this other crazy stuff as well. So basically, that's kind of like that's a race condition where you're competing for memory or there's all kind of different things that can happen. You can write one program that creates a race condition, by the way, too. A race condition is where there's competition for resources and it gets all out of hand. Either you run out of disk space, or either you run out of memory. There's a lot of things that can happen. And like I said, the easiest way is putting 2 antiviruses on the same system and see what happens. Both of them will race to see who can defend first, and you'll end up hosed. Vulnerabilities in life systems. Sometimes, definitely, this talks about these. When I think of vulnerabilities due to this, I think of the healthcare space a lot. Basically, when people come out with a particular device, sometimes they write custom software, and sometimes the person that wrote it is like a one and done situation where they wrote it, boom, and somebody said manufacturing lines. So some of these systems are end of life after they're released almost, as far as like the code goes. Embedded systems, meaning, IoT is, everybody's talking about IoT. All these systems you wanna demand, if you're on an enterprise, it says lack of vendor support. These are things you don't want to happen. If you're buying something, you want to make sure there's vendor report. This is an opposite, right? So embedded systems, you want to make sure that you can update those embedded systems, right? End of life systems, you want to make sure that you're buying stuff that, again, ties into support, that's going to be supported. All right, improper input handling. So I think somebody earlier put in something about example.com. It looked like there was a cross-site scripting bug on example.com. Who shared that later? Share that. Somebody said example.com and something. So basically, input handling. So when you write code, you want to make sure that you want to make sure that you're handling the right input. Now, because if you don't, you could end up with one of these vulnerabilities over on this side, right? Input handling, error handling, they go hand in hand. And so in some of these things can end up being critical flaws that can lead to compromise. Misconfiguration or weak configuration. Remember when we first set up the routers? I mean the multi-layer switches, and we had them wide open. Those are examples of that. Default configurations. There's. Now watch this. I'm gonna do a search for this real quick. I'm gonna search for default security configurations. Right. Security password list, and I bet you something's gonna come up. Look at that list of default passwords. All right. Look at this. So, and an attacker is gonna try to do these, to try to get all these, right? And that's just me doing a 2-second search. And just me being able to Google this. Now, again, anything that can be done, you see this right here? Telnet. Multiple. That means it can be done by network and telnet. Telnet, SNMP, telnet, port, this port, boom, boom. So all these different things here, what that's telling me is that if I'm an attacker, I can write a script to do all this stuff. Apple Airport. Somebody just said Cisco in here. Let's look up Cisco. Boom. Cisco, any router, boom, boom. It's telling all this stuff. So, I've actually had this happen to me before, funny enough. It didn't get compromised, but this blew my mind. So I had bought I bought a Switch. I don't even know how. Oh, so yeah. So I bought this Switch, and I knew I could like telnet to it, but I didn't know that I had also had a web server on it too. So I would say anytime you hook something up to your network, any kind of device, you want to do an Nmap scan on it, all right? Because I had a device that I did not know had a web interface on it, and I used to, and that joke was online forever, and it was like on, and it had a default thing on there. So I always scan to see what stuff's there. But again, this is default passwords. This is default configurations. You want to make sure that you look up and see if you can log into that machine somehow, and make sure that you get rid of. Sometimes even if you set up your own customized passwords or whatever, there may still be this admin account on there that you forget to change. So always make sure that you check that out. Because attackers, this isn't. I guarantee you, this isn't a tool. This is an easy tool to write. What I would do if I was writing this tool is I would write a tool. I would put all these things in a list, and I would just go through this and try to see if I can log into stuff. Guarantee you that this is already done. All right. Default configuration. You want to change that. Resource exhaustion. This happens a lot. I heard this a lot. So when the COVID thing first hit and coronavirus and everybody was quarantined, a lot of people they actually ran into this resource exhaustion problem with their VPNs, right? So basically, they have VPN concentrators, and a lot of people were, and a lot of stuff actually the stuff wasn't patched, all kind of crazy stuff. Untrained users. Yeah, so basically, this right here, users, I love users. Heck, I'm a user, right? But definitely, you have to be able to train your users to do the correct actions. Definitely, some people don't like security awareness training. I think that security awareness training is definitely critical. Improperly configured accounts. Basically, the principle of least privilege. In the military, we have this thing called need to know access only. And so you definitely want to don't give people permissions more than they need. Vulnerable business processes, same thing. This is like, there's a lot of business processes that are ripe for compromise. And like a lot of CFOs, chief financial officers, have been targeted for and this kind of goes hand in hand. This untrained users, a lot of them have been caught because there's these crazy processes where you have to wire money to certain things. So social engineering is a big thing. So what they'll do, is they'll trick the CFO into wiring money to some kind of account. So they'll send an invoice to the CEO from the CEO's account, quote unquote. Even if sometimes they break into the CEO's account just to get the CFO to do something. So it'll be from the dang account. So there should be business processes to prevent that from happening. And there's been major people have wired a lot of money, like some commas and all kind of stuff, zeros and commas. So make sure that all those different things, because sometimes we think of this as all digital, but sometimes the human aspect and making sure the users, like the CEO should say, I will never send you an email or something to wire. That should never be done or something like that, right? Don't believe it, right? Weak cipher suites. Basically, a lot of times this is implementation, but heck, Heartbleed was a crypto related issue per se, right? So sometimes even if you trust the implementation, sometimes you can be vulnerable for years. All right, so all these are member and buffer stuff like this. So what's interesting about here, that this one is hot. This one is a hot one right here. People are playing around with DLLs nowadays, because they're getting around trusted trusted binaries and stuff like that. So sometimes a DL stands for Dynamic Link Library, and it's actually a program that supports running other programs. So sometimes you can actually run a legit program, but you can have a bad DLL that it loads. So you can run any program, and and usually what it does, a program will look in its same folder, and it'll just grab the DLL that's labeled as the same. So what'll happen is I'm loading calc.exe. Calc.exe requires this DLL, so it looks first in the local directory. In order to run this DLL, there could be bad stuff. And so that term, what Wobbuffet said, is DLL hijacking. And sometimes that bypasses all kind of different things. That bypasses a lot of security controls too. So memory leak. This is kind of like what happened. This was kind of like I believe Heartbleed was kind of like a memory leak thing, where it was leaking data. Integer overflow. I saw somebody earlier talking about coding. So basically, if you have typed variables, and you have so much space for the variables, what can happen is if you go over the allocated thing, there's errors, and it goes back to this error handling and input handling, right? Also, there's so buffer overflows and many of these things are because somebody messed up and didn't account for improper stuff. Pointer dereference. So in languages, what's cool about there's this thing called pointers, where you can actually, every variable is stored in memory somewhere, and so what you can do is you can actually, if you can essentially, if you can kind of guess where some certain things are being held in memory, as an attacker, you can grab stuff out of memory. And this is, many of these things is used for regular programmers use pointers and things of that nature all the time. But it can be used for good or evil. It depends. You got to know what you're doing when you're coding this stuff up. System sprawl and undocumented assets. Basically, the bring your own device movement, where I can take my computer and have everything I want to on it. I can take my device and have anything I want to do on it. Right? This is my phone, my watch, my laptop, my tablet, all that stuff. So people, in many cases, like, on my phone I have a Duo app, and Duo tries to actually tell me, it tries to see if my stuff is up to date. That's kind of helps out with this whole undocumented assets. Architecture and design weaknesses. So I can tell you a true story that happened one time. Let's talk about it. So, talking about architecture design. Check this out. We'll go over Excalibur and give you a real true story again. In some networks, basically, remember how I was talking about we had firewalls and all that? And sometimes you might have two ISPs. And what they call this is they called it dual homed, is what they called it. That means that I'm connected to this ISP. So if that ISP go down, we have a backup. Alright. Well, what the heck? Boom. I can't. A second. Alright. So, this is. I'm going to say this is a router, right? This is a router going to the outside. Typically, you have a router, and so you have an ISP. Let's call this one. I'm gonna zoom in. You have ISP 1. You have ISP 2. Now, on this side, what you have is you have firewall. Your firewall's in there. Now, and in here, in case that router goes bad, what I've seen people do is they'll have multiple routers out here. I mean, this is gonna get a little bit complicated, but this is some stuff to be looking for. And I'm gonna ask y'all a question in a second. This really happens a lot. I've seen it happen personally. All right, so I got two. I can come from here. So let's say this is router 1, router 2. All right, so typically on a firewall, what you're gonna have is like all this other the width and depth stuff, all the network. This is your network here. This is your network. There are many networks like it, but this network is yours. It was a real funny joke I just told. I don't know if any of y'all get it. Alright. I just did an amazing pun. Alright. So, what I've seen happen is this. I've seen people forget to connect router 2 to the firewall and plugged it directly into the network. Right? What happens is you have protection one way. As long as traffic is going out of here, you're totally okie dokie fine. But the minute something changes, like a BGP route or something crazy like that happens, all your traffic is going out of here. And what I have seen happen with my own eyes is I've seen a BGP route change and advertise better traffic through here. And I've saw a nation state hacker coalition come through and totally bypass the firewall and everything on this path right here. 100% totally happened. I saw it with my own eyes. So these nation state hackers were on the network going through this back channel and they were bypassing the firewall. Why wouldn't you connect both routers to the firewall? because they made a mistake. What should have happened is this. Watch out for stuff like this to happen, by the way. In this case, router 1 was at a different location than router 2 was. So you either have to plug it into there, or you have to set up another firewall here in between there. I've seen people justify this because the justification could be, oh, we're never going to do that. It's a backup only, and we're fine. We're okay, right? But I seen in my own 2 eyes that the nation state hackers were totally exploiting that big thing, and the security team of this organization could not see anything. And the hackers were on our network for a long time, and they didn't even notice. All because traffic got routed this way instead of that way. So, true story. So that's right here. Terrible design. Terrible design. New threats, 0 days. So, I think that you shouldn't worry about 0 days a lot. And this is the reason why. I told y'all the story about how attackers up their level and depending on the sophistication of the victim. So when you're out there, the better you get a defense, the better they're going to have to use more resources on their side, right? Also, if you suck, they're not going to use anything amazing on you. Because why would I burn? We call it burning 0 days. You save a 0 day for a really important mission. You're not going to burn a 0 day on somebody that can't catch Garden Variety malware. Why would you do that? That's just stupid. So the attacker's not going to hit you with 0 day if you can't tell you got 2 year day still working on you. I'm going to zoom out here. The reason why you should not worry about 0 day is because if you have defense in depth proper, once the attacker starts pivoting and all the other stuff, you should be good to go and you should see that person moving across your network. Because the 0 day is only going to give them access to that one box. Right? They're just going to get access to this machine. They're not going to use 0 days everywhere. They're not going to. That doesn't exist, right? You have to. Once you compromise this endpoint, you're going to use all the same tools, responder, Metasploit, pick your poison, right? Somebody said Equifax got hit with a 60 day. Yeah, it's just like. And they still didn't see it initially. So here's the deal. And I don't want to blame the victims. I don't blame the whole victim blaming stuff. And I try to keep myself from doing that. But the truth is, you gotta be able to see. You gotta be able to have good defense in depth. Make sure everything's updated. Make sure you have the visibility. Make sure you have all that stuff. Make sure you're architecting your network correctly. Because in this, it doesn't matter if it's a 0 day or not this way. Because nobody can see it anyway. However, if they got a 0 day here, they got to exploit, but then they start trying to exfil traffic. They're trying to take data off the network, your DLP, your whatever, to see that. So that's why you have defense in depth and you architect it right. Hopefully that makes sense. 0 days should not matter. 0 days should not matter. Improper key management. The thing I see popping up all the time on improper key management is I see people putting keys. There's this thing called PKI. There's a private key versus public key. I think we'll probably cover it. Probably. I see people posting their private keys in GitHub things. I see people leaving them exposed in different ways. So basically, if you're doing PKI, you want to make sure that you're handling your keys properly. This is asymmetric cryptography. I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about it. I would be totally shocked if it's not in some other module. But anyway, so a private key is like a password. You want to make sure that you don't let that out on the internet. All right. Wow. That's pretty intense. Wow, look at all that. A bunch of terms. All right. So what I'd like y'all to do is do terms. We should do terms 1.5, 1.6, and do the terms for 2.1. Next class, Thursday, we're gonna be on 2.2. I'm gonna cover this stuff on 2.2. We have covered some of this stuff. We're gonna start on 2.2, and I'm done for tonight. Any questions? All right, I really appreciate y'all for showing up again. I'll see y'all Thursday. Y'all take care and stay safe out there. Peace.